It was 3 nights ago. I'm Jake, 32, an orderly at the local hospital. I took the night shifts to save money for my wedding. My fiancée, Anna, worked long hours. She didn't have time to help me pay bills. So I worked these weird hours, wandering the quiet, dimly lit hallways. On my third night, I was halfway through my rounds when I passed room 205. It should have been empty, but I heard whispers coming from inside. My heart dropped as I checked the log. The patient was marked for surgery. I felt a chill race down my spine. I carefully stepped closer to the door. I stood there, listening, but the whispers faded and stopped. A weird unease settled into my stomach. The next 2 nights, I pushed my cart down the halls, but the whispers returned. This time, they were clearer. I think I even heard my name once. Jake. It sent shivers through me. I tried to shake it off. Maybe it was just my tired mind playing tricks. Then I noticed something odd about the patients. I'd catch their eyes on me, wide open, when they shouldn't be awake. There was a lady in room 207 who had been out cold for days. One night, she suddenly opened her eyes and locked onto mine. I felt a jolt. It was like she was trying to tell me something. I found notes tucked in strange places, too. They were in drawers, under paperwork. I opened one and saw a crumpled scrap with a tragic story about a patient who died years before I worked there. I didn't understand all of it, but I knew I couldn't ignore them. The weight of these notes kept pressing on me. I felt watched. The walls seemed to close in with each shift. I knew I was crossing some invisible line. I dreaded what I might find. One night, I shut off the lights and took deep breaths. I felt someone there. I turned, but no one was there. Just silence. Then I heard it, clear as day. Jake, help us. It was soft but piercing. I froze. My heart raced. Maybe I was losing it, but deep down, I felt they were real. The whispers grew louder in my mind. I walked back to my cart, but I hesitated. What if I don't help? What would happen to me? I didn't know what to do. The next night was worse. I was pushing my cart down the dim hall when I heard 2 voices whispering my name. This time, they sounded desperate. Jake, please! I sprinted to room 205. The door clicked open just as I arrived. The room was empty. My breath quickened. I backed away, feeling hot and cold at the same time. I couldn't shake the feeling of eyes watching me. Then I saw shadows flickering in the hallway. I turned my flashlight toward them. Nothing. It felt wrong. My gut churned with dread. The whispers were more insistent now, echoing in my ears. I wanted to run, but something tied me to that place. I felt the weight of their stories. I knew I was about to discover things that shouldn't be unearthed. I took a deep breath, closed my eyes, and waited for the next whisper to come. I stood there in the darkness, heart pounding, waiting. It felt like the world had paused around me. Then it came again, the whisper. Jake, we're here. This time it was softer, a breathy echo slipping through the air. I couldn't pinpoint where it came from, but it felt like it wrapped around me. I backed away from room 205, my instincts screaming at me to get out of the area. Instead, I turned and walked down the hall, my footsteps echoing against the sterile tiles. I couldn't escape the feeling that I was being drawn into something I didn't understand. I thought about the notes I found and the woman in room 207. I had to know what was happening. I decided to check room 207 again. The nurse's station was just ahead, dimly lit, and I could see the shadows moving inside. My heart raced. I need answers. I pushed through the door and strode toward her room. As I approached room 207, I hesitated. It was quiet, too quiet. I peeked through the small glass window. She was still there. But this time, her eyes were open, staring straight at the ceiling. I pushed the door open slowly. "Hello?" I said, my voice shaky. No answer. I moved closer. The woman's eyes flicked toward me, and I felt that same jolt I had before. I could see fear in her gaze. It sent chills down my spine. "Help me," she whispered, her voice barely a sound. "You need to see. He's coming for you." I took a step back, the air thickening around us. "Who?" I managed to ask. Before she could respond, the hospital lights flickered violently, casting long shadows over the room. Then a jarring crash erupted from the end of the hallway. I jumped, adrenaline surging. It sounded like something had fallen. My mind raced with possibilities. I glanced back at her. "Stay here," I said firmly, trying to sound brave, but I felt the opposite. I didn't want to leave her alone, yet I needed to go check what had happened. I turned and raced down the hall, my heart hammering with each step. The sounds echoed louder in the stillness. When I reached the source, my stomach dropped. A stretcher had overturned, supplies sprawled everywhere. But something else caught my attention, something glimmering beneath the overhead lights. I bent down to retrieve what looked like a small silver locket. I picked it up and opened it. The picture inside was blurry, worn out, yet I recognized the face. The woman from room 207. My blood ran cold. "No," I breathed. I had stumbled into something deeply wrong, something tangled in the fabric of this hospital. Suddenly, I felt a presence behind me. It was overwhelming. I could hear frantic whispers again, but they were different, urgent, agitated. I turned sharply, expecting someone to be there. That's when I saw it. A figure, just a shadow, standing at the far end of the hall, staring right at me. Everything inside me screamed to run, but I couldn't move. I felt the weight of the past pressing on me, pulling me closer. "Jake," it said, echoing my name. And in that moment, I realized I was no longer just an observer in this place. I was a part of it. I had to figure out what was happening before it was too late. I could feel my heart pounding in my ears. The shadow at the end of the hall didn't move, but the air around me grew colder, thick with unease. I blinked hard, trying to make sense of this figure. My instincts screamed for me to flee, but curiosity held me in place. "Who are you?" I croaked, my voice barely rising above a whisper. The figure remained silent, its shape blurring and shifting, like smoke caught in a gentle wind. "Jake," it breathed again, this time more insistent, more urgent. "You have to listen." The hairs on my neck stood on end as I took a cautious step forward. "What do you want?" My throat felt tight. I didn't know if it was fear or the hospital's stale air that choked me. Suddenly, the lights flickered once more, throwing dark shadows in every direction. The figure seemed to pulse with the light, flickering in and out of focus. I squinted, trying to decipher its form, but a growing dread settled over me. "I can't help you if you don't help yourself," it said, words laced with desperation. "You're not safe here." "From what?" I shot back, my voice shaky but firm. "What's going on?" The figure hesitated, then pointed down the hall toward room 205. I felt a chill run down my spine. "He's waiting for you," it said, voice dropping to a whisper. "You have to face him." I looked down the hall at the ominous room 205, the door slightly ajar. The faint glow of light slipped through the crack, beckoning me. I could feel the pull, a strange mixture of fear and necessity. Something inside me knew I needed to go, to just see what lay beyond that door. "I can't," I said, backing away. "I can't do this." "You must," the shadow urged, voice growing fainter, "before it's too late." Before I could respond, the lights blinked one last time, and the figure disappeared. I was left standing alone, breathless.
My mind raced with thoughts of the woman in room 207, the locket in my hand, and the figure who had just spoken to me. I took a deep breath and steeled myself. It was time to face whatever this was. I moved down the hall, each step toward room 205 feeling heavier. The whispers lingered, echoing in my mind as I pushed the door open wide. Inside, the room was dimly lit, the shadows twisting in the faint glow. It was empty, yet something felt off. The air was thick, charged with a sense of foreboding. I glanced around for any sign of life, but found only an eerie stillness. Then I noticed a slip of paper on the floor, its edges frayed. I knelt down to get it, and as I unfolded the note, my heart sank. It was a hastily scrawled message. "The truth is buried. Find the locket. Trust no one." Confusion swirled in my mind. What truth? As I stood up, I heard a footstep behind me. My stomach dropped. I wasn't alone anymore. I turned quickly, pulse racing. A figure blocked the doorway, silhouetted against the light. Before I could jump back, it spoke softly. "You shouldn't have come here." And just like that, my heart raced again, plunging me deeper into a world I wasn't prepared to face. The figure stepped closer, its face obscured by the dim light. I couldn't make out any features, but the voice was unmistakable. It was low and steady, resonating in a way that both terrified and intrigued me. "What are you looking for?" I froze. I didn't know how to respond. Questions swirled around in my head. Was this person connected to the shadow I had just seen? I'm just trying to understand," I stammered. "Understand." The figure chuckled under its breath, the sound echoing in the empty room. "You've already stumbled into something you can't comprehend." I took a step back, glancing at the note crumpled in my hand. The truth was buried? I needed answers, but there was something ominous about the air around this person. "Who are you?" I demanded, hoping for clarity. "Someone who knows more than they should," the figure replied, shifting slightly. "And someone who's here to warn you." For a moment, I considered turning and running. This wasn't what I had signed up for. I was supposed to be helping people, not being drawn into some twisted game. But the thought of the shadow lingered, the urgency in its voice still echoing in my ears. "Listen," the figure said, finally stepping into the light. My breath caught in my throat. It was a man, older, with tired eyes that seemed to bore into my soul. "You need to leave this place, now." "Why?" I asked, my voice barely more than a whisper. "Why must I go?" "Because something is happening here, something that has already started," he said, glancing nervously over his shoulder. "And you are right in the middle of it." I felt a shiver run down my spine. "What do you mean?" "He's watching." The man's voice dropped to a murmur, and the atmosphere felt electric, almost suffocating. Before I could respond, the lights overhead flickered again, filling the room with a dizzying strobe effect. Instinctively, I shielded my eyes. When I opened them, the man was no longer there. Panic surged through me. I turned, scanning the shadows, convinced that something was lurking just out of sight. I stumbled backward, my pulse hammering. That's when I noticed a shape emerging from the darkness behind the doorframe. Another shadow. "Jake." The sinister voice sent chills through me. It was familiar, yet twisted. I strained to see the figure more clearly, but everything felt like a nightmare, blurry and oppressive. "What do you want?" I yelled, my voice trembling. "Your choice leads to your end," it said, its tone thick with malice. "You should have listened." Suddenly, the ground beneath me felt unstable, and I realized the air had shifted.
A dense fog seeped into the room, swallowing the light and casting me into darkness. I couldn't hear anything but the pounding of my own heart echoing in the silence. Then I remembered the locket, the one that had belonged to the woman in room 207. Her urgency had been clear. Maybe it was time to search for the truth, no matter the cost. Just then, I felt something icy brush past me, and I turned. In the swirling darkness, something glinted, a familiar shape. The locket. I lunged toward it, heart racing, desperate to uncover whatever lies sat behind this nightmare. But as I grasped the cold metal, the room around me warped, shadows closing in on all sides. What was waiting for me on the other side of this choice? I had to find out before it was too late. I gripped the locket tightly, the chill of the metal grounding me for a moment. As I held it, the darkness seemed to pulse, and it felt as though time had stood still. I focused on the intricate markings, tracing them with my fingers. What did this mean? Suddenly, a loud crash echoed behind me. I spun around, heart racing. The door to the room I was in slammed shut, as if it had a mind of its own. I rushed to the door, pulling on the handle, but it was locked tight. The fog was thick now, wrapping around me like a blanket that stifled breath. "Who's there?" I shouted, trying to sound braver than I felt. I strained to listen, ears tuned for any sound in the suffocating silence. Just then, a flicker of light caught my eye. It was faint, barely visible through the swirling mist. I took a hesitant step toward it, hoping it would lead me to an exit. But something shifted in the fog, and I could make out a figure. My pulse quickened. The shape solidified into a man, tall and ethereal, mirroring the figure I had seen moments before. "You shouldn't be here," he said, his voice like the wind whispering through trees. "Who are you?" I managed, dread pooling in my stomach. He stepped closer, and I could see his face was shadowed, features indistinct. You are not safe. Where the light is, there is hope." "Hope? What hope? I'm lost." I felt desperation creeping into my voice, and the locket in my hand felt heavier. "What do I do?" Suddenly, he raised his hand, revealing a glinting object. My heart sank. The other locket, the one I had seen in 207. "This is the key," he said, gesturing toward it. "But understand, it will reveal what you seek and what you won't want to see." He stepped back as the fog closed in again. "It's time to decide." Before I could even form a response, the temperature dropped, and he vanished. The light flickered and dimmed. I was alone again, the weight of dread bearing down on me. I clutched the locket to my chest, wondering what he meant. Why did everything feel like a trap? I couldn't let fear take hold. I had to uncover the truth. The note in my pocket felt burning hot against my skin. Was it really just a warning? Taking a deep breath, I glanced around the fog-covered room, searching for anything, another clue, a way out, anything. My gaze landed on the far wall. A door, slightly ajar, larger than I remembered, seemed like my only option. As I crept toward it, a pulse of dread shot through me. The shadow voice echoed in my mind, taunting, "You should have listened." I hesitated for a heartbeat, but then I pushed the door open. On the other side waited a hallway, but before I could take a step, the thudding of footsteps grew louder behind me. Someone was coming, and they weren't slowing down. I vaulted through the door and into the hallway, adrenaline coursing through my veins. The footsteps thundered closer, a relentless echo that quickened my breath. I found myself in a long corridor, the walls lined with faded photos of smiling faces. It felt wrong. I could sense something lurking just beyond the smiles. I dashed forward, praying for any hint of a way to escape. The hallway twisted under the dim fluorescent lights, making it seem longer than it was. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Glancing over my shoulder, I spotted the door I had just come through was now sealed shut,
a solid barrier against whatever was chasing me. My heart pounded like a war drum, each beat a reminder of my very real fear. I turned a corner, the sound of my footsteps muffled against the worn-out floor. In the distance, I spotted another door, slightly ajar. I rushed towards it, hand reaching out instinctively to push it open. The room beyond was shrouded in shadows, and an unsettling silence wrapped around me. I hesitated, peering inside, half expecting the man in the fog to be waiting for me. Instead, I found a sterile space, hospital beds lined up as if waiting for patients that would never come, IV stands looming like specters over the lifeless sheets. And then
It hit me. The locket in my hand felt warmer, pulsating against my skin, as though it had a purpose here. I stepped deeper into the room, guided by an unseen force. The air turned heavy, and I felt the weight of eyes on me again. That's when I saw it, a glint of metal gleaming under the stark light. It lay on the floor, partially hidden beneath a bed. I knelt down, pushing aside dust and debris to reveal what it was. Another locket, identical to the one I held, but different. Its surface was smooth, unmarred by any etchings. A new question knotted me. Why were there two? I felt the pull of both around my neck, as if they were magnets drawing me closer. With my heart racing, I reached for it. As my fingers closed around the second locket, the lights blinked and flickered. Suddenly, the room plunged into darkness. I could hear distant whispers, a language I didn't understand. Panic set in. I stumbled back, trying to find my way to the door, but shadows were moving, slithering across the floor. I fought against the suffocating darkness, but terror gripped my heart. One final glance over my shoulder confirmed it. The whispers grew louder, coiling tightly around me. There were figures moving toward me. I couldn't distinguish who or what they were. I had to make a choice, and fast. Would I keep both lockets, or would one reveal a way out? Before I could fully process my fear, the lights returned. The room was empty, save for the two lockets in my grasp. For a fleeting moment, clarity washed over me. I could either embrace the unknown or flee in terror. But just as I took a breath to decide, the air grew heavy again, and a shadowy figure took form at the far end of the corridor. I was running out of time. The figure loomed still, a dark silhouette against the light spilling from the doorway. My instincts screamed for me to run, but my feet felt glued to the floor. Was it real? My pulse raced at the horror of facing whatever that was. Panic threatened to drown me again. Suddenly, a low groan echoed through the hallway, jolting me from my stupor. It was the kind of sound I had always associated with nightmares. I tore my gaze away from the figure and bolted back into the room. The second locket dangled heavy from my grip, and I could feel the first one thudding against my chest. I heard footsteps approaching, steady and unyielding. They were close, too close. I backed into the far corner of the room, trying to catch my breath. My heart thudded louder than before, drowning out the whispers that flitted through the air. I had to think. There had to be an escape. Peeking around the edge of the nearest hospital bed, I prayed that whatever was coming would pass without noticing me. I needed to
find out what these lockets were for. What was their connection to this place? Then I felt a chill. A deep, creeping cold that slithered up my spine. The figure wasn't just a shadow anymore. I could see the outline of a face. Eyes gleamed with a knowing intensity, locking onto mine. I looked down at the lockets, desperate for an answer, but there was nothing to indicate what I should do next. I remembered the whispers, a language unknown yet hauntingly familiar. My hand tightened around the second locket, and without even thinking, I shouted, "Who are you?" The words echoed in the empty room, bouncing back as if the walls were alive. Silence followed, heavy and oppressive. The footsteps stopped. I took another step back, ready to bolt again, but the answer came not in words. Instead, my own locket grew hot, pulsing in rhythm with my racing heart, as if answering to the figure. As I held both lockets closer, the shadows around me began to shift. I could almost hear a melody. It was soft yet powerful, wrapping around me like a protective barrier. The dim fluorescent lights flickered again, illuminating the room. Then, just as quickly, the lights faded, leaving me in darkness once more. But I could still hear it, a whisper that threaded through the air, urging me to come closer, as if something was trying to reveal itself to me. But then I heard a shout, distinct and urgent. A loud crash erupted from behind the far door in the corridor. My heart sank. What had broken? Was it more shadows or the figure? Either way, I had to make a move before it found me. In a frenzied decision, I clutched both lockets firmly and pressed against the wall, ready to flee if need be. But just as I planned my escape route, the door burst open. The light poured in from the hallway, sharper this time, and I squinted against it. The shadow stepped forward, a patch of darkness within the light. I braced for confrontation, but instead, what emerged was worse than anything I could have imagined. It was someone I knew all too well, but they were different, twisted, insidious. I realized too late that I had entered a deeper horror than I could conceive, and I was no longer the hunter. I was prey, and it was coming for me. I stood frozen, staring at the creature that once resembled a close friend. Their eyes, once warm and inviting, now held nothing but malice. The familiar shape only added to my fear, twisting memories into a nightmare. I had to remind myself that this wasn't the person I knew. Whatever had come through that door was something else entirely. "Help me," it whispered, but the voice was wrong. It was raspy and echoed in a way that chilled me to my core. Every instinct screamed at me to run. "Stay back," I shouted, gripping the lockets tighter. The weight in my hands was oddly comforting, like a lifeline. The figure lurched toward me, its movements jerky and unnatural. I pressed myself against the wall, ready to flee, but my feet felt like lead. "This isn't you!" I yelled, trying to reach through the haze of horror. "Fight it!" It paused, blinking slowly as if struggling with an inner battle. Something flickered in its eyes, a moment of clarity. But just as quickly, darkness overtook it again. "You shouldn't have come back," it hissed, revealing sharp teeth that glinted in the light. My heart raced. I used the moment to break the paralysis gripping me. I dashed toward the open door, adrenaline surging, as I heard something behind me, a guttural snarl that ignited my fight-or-flight response. I burst into the hallway, the flickering lights barely keeping the shadows at bay. I ran, feet pounding against the cold floor, the image of my friend morphing into a nightmare burned into my mind. I had to find a way out, but I didn't know where to go. The hospital's corridors twisted like a maze. Every door looked the same. Every hallway was a new chance to get lost. Suddenly, I caught sight of another figure at the end of the corridor. This one was cloaked in darkness, but something about it felt different. I skidded to a stop, heart thudding loudly in my chest. "What do you want?" I called out, my voice shaking. The figure lifted its hand, and I saw a glint of metal. "The lockets," it said, its voice smooth and commanding. "Give them to me." My breath hitched. I had no intention of letting go of either locket. They were all I had left. "Why?" I demanded, backing down the hallway. "What do you know about them?" The figure stepped closer, and I could finally see its face. It was a stranger, but something in its expression seemed almost familiar. "They hold the key, a connection to this place," it explained, an unsettling calm settling in his voice. "You need to trust me." "Trust?" I scoffed, glancing back to where the twisted replica of my friend stood at the door. I could still feel its hungry gaze in my back. Why would I do that? "You're running out of time," it urged, and behind it I heard the thundering footsteps of the creature pursuing me.
Panic gripped me again. "Listen," I shouted. "I just want to get out of here." "That's exactly what these lockets can help you do," it promised. "But you must choose. The moment you hold them together, you activate a power tied to the darkness here. This place can allow you to escape, or it can seal your fate." I hesitated, my mind racing. Could I trust this stranger? With a glance over my shoulder, I could see the other figure gaining ground. I had no choice. "Do it," it urged. I took a deep breath and held the lockets together. In a flash, everything
went white, and then darkness enveloped me. The darkness pulled me in, thick and cold. It felt like falling through a bottomless pit. But then, suddenly, a rush of light flooded my senses, disorienting me. I blinked and found myself lying on a floor, the sterile scent of the hospital overwhelming my nostrils. Heart racing, I sat up, scanning my surroundings. I was back in the hallway. But everything felt off. The walls seemed to hum, and the flickering lights buzzed louder than before. I heard whispers echoing through the air, like a distant memory just out of reach. My hands instinctively gripped the lockets tighter. I got to my feet, legs shaky. A wave of nausea hit me, and I leaned against the wall for support. "What just happened?" I murmured to myself, trying to make sense of it all. I could have sworn I was moments away from being caught, yet now I was here, alone. "Is anyone there?" I called out, my voice feeling small in the empty corridor. Silence enveloped me, but it was a heavy silence, charged with tension. As I stepped cautiously forward, I noticed a door slightly ajar at the end of the hall. A flash of hope sparked inside me. Maybe there was a way out, or maybe I'd find help. I approached the door, each step echoing in the stillness. The whispers grew louder again, and I pressed my ear against the crack. Was I imagining it, or could I hear a voice? My heart raced at the thought. I pushed the door open slowly. The room was dark, the only light coming from a solitary window. I squinted, trying to discern what lay beyond the threshold. It looked like an office. Papers cluttered the desk, and a chair was overturned, as if someone had hastily left. That's when I saw it, a journal lying open on the desk. I stepped inside, heart pounding with curiosity. The diary belonged to someone named Dr. Harris. Words leapt out at me, scrawled in frantic handwriting. The lockets, a bridge to the other side, must contain the darkness before it spreads. I felt a shiver run down my spine. What darkness? That chilling encounter with my friend flashed in my mind, and I swallowed hard. I flipped through the pages, searching for more clues. Each entry was more disturbing than the last, detailing strange occurrences in the hospital. The whispering grew louder, urgent. I could feel a draft skimming my neck, chilling me to the bone. I slammed the journal shut, heart racing. "Get out! Get out!" I thought frantically. Just as I turned to leave, a figure appeared in the doorway. A nurse? No, it was the dark figure from before, standing at the threshold. My breath caught in my throat. What did they want? "Did you find it?" the figure asked, voice low and eerie, slicing through the tension. I felt my gut twist. "Find what?" I stammered, eyes darting around. "For an exit," it replied, stepping closer, "and the key." Before I could react, a loud banging echoed through the hall. The lights flickered violently, and shadows danced on the walls. "You have to hurry," the figure yelled, urgency flooding their tone. "The darkness is coming." I bolted past them, the journal clutched tightly in my hand. I didn't stop to look back, but I could feel the weight of their gaze tracking me as I sped down the corridor. I needed answers, but first I needed to survive.
I ran down the hallway, heart pounding, the echo of my footsteps drowned out by the chaos gathering behind me. The flickering lights created a surreal atmosphere, shadows twisting menacingly around me. All I could think about was the urgency in the stranger's voice. The darkness was coming. Dashing past room after room, I searched frantically for a way out. Suddenly, my foot caught on something, and I stumbled, barely catching myself on the wall. I looked down to see a file tray scattered on the floor, papers spilling out. I haphazardly gathered a couple, my eyes darting over the contents. Patient records and notes. One particular name stood out: Evelyn Fields, marked deceased a decade ago. I pocketed the paper as I continued, feeling a chill creep over me. The name sent shivers down my spine. For some reason, I needed to know more about her. I skidded around a corner, nearly colliding with a supply cart, and ducked down another hallway that was markedly quieter than the one I had fled. The oppressive energy of the place started to shift, somehow less heavy. As I sprinted through the halls, the whispers seemed to mold into a fragmented chatter, pressing at the edges of my consciousness. Jake, the locket, the truth, escape, were words I isolated from the noise, and they knocked against my mind like a drumbeat. The hallway ended in a T-junction. The left path led to the emergency exit, my only chance. But as I turned, I heard it, the unmistakable sound of footsteps. Close behind me, unmistakably catching up. Without thinking, I darted right. In a final push, I spotted an open door at the end of the hall, a gathering spot for staff. I rushed inside, closing it behind me and locking it with trembling fingers. The room was filled with abandoned charts and old furniture, wires hanging loosely from the ceiling. It felt eerie, like stepping into a time capsule of the hospital's past. I leaned against the door, breathing hard, but the noise behind me pressed on. I could hear shadowy whispers drawing near, mingling with the frantic pounding of my pulse. The air grew thick, a suffocating blanket waiting to pull me in. "Jake," a voice called from the other side. Familiar, twisted. It was the distorted echo of my friend. "You can't hide forever." My heart sank. I could feel the anguish wrapped around those words. "I'm not hiding," I found myself saying, almost defiantly, as though reasoning with the lingering specter of who they once were. Suddenly, I spotted something shiny across the room. Another locket nestled among a pile of forgotten supplies. I rushed towards it, grabbing it and weighing it in my palm. It felt eerily familiar. The same delicate design, the same cold touch. This one was different. The surface radiated warmth as I held it closely. "What do you want from me?" I shouted, half praying for an answer to emerge. Silence wrapped around me. And then came a loud crash. The door exploded inward as the other figure broke through. Shadows flared, swirling around the room, merging with the flickering lights overhead. The familiar shape stepped inside, eyes dark and soulless. It reached for me with an outstretched hand. Everything inside screamed at me to run, but I clutched the two lockets tightly, feeling their warmth radiating through my clenching fingers. "Get away!" I shouted, but the words felt futile against the oppressive weight of its presence. It stopped, confusion knitting its brow. "You hold the key." "What key? What does that mean?" "It was always about choice," it replied, voice slipping between anger and despair. "You must decide." My mind raced as I looked between the lockets. Choosing one meant sealing something away, crushing someone's chance for freedom, perhaps even my own. I could feel the path I had taken had led me deep into something that transcended choices. It was entrapment. "Choose now," it snarled, advancing closer. With determination I didn't know I had, I raised both lockets high. Perhaps their warmth could protect me. "I will," I declared, though my heart twisted in uncertainty. Palms sweaty, I pressed both against my chest and closed my eyes, focusing on the chant that lived in my mind. Light. Truth. The whispers grew in intensity.
A gasp escaped me as I felt a surge, power coiling around me. The shadows recoiled, and the air shimmered as a blinding light erupted from the lockets, bathing the room in luminous clarity. Brightness washed over everything, the documents, the furniture, including the shadow before me. And then they just dissolved. Staggering as the light subsided, I found myself standing alone again, the room eerily quiet. Heart racing, I dropped to my knees. The 2 lockets lay intact in my hands, but now they were inactive, cold against my skin. What had I done? The whispers faded into a faint echo. Were their stories truly over, or had I simply misunderstood their significance? A sense of loss settled in my stomach like a stone, heavier than any fear I had felt. Glancing around the empty room, it dawned on me that I might never know the complete picture. Questions buzzed through my thoughts. Who were those people? Why were they trapped? Was there a way to bring their stories to light? I stood helplessly, perched between uncertainty and escape, the tension around me slowly unwinding. As I turned to find the exit, I couldn't shake the feeling that
this was only the beginning of a much deeper mystery. I stepped into the hallway, exhaling deeply. I might not know the full truth, but I was still alive. I moved toward the emergency exit ahead, my heart thrumming in a strange mix of anxiety and relief. This ordeal changed everything. I paused before the door, looking back at the shadows clinging to the corners of the hallway. Would I ever be able to fully forget what haunted me here? As I pushed through the door and into the night air, I couldn't help but wonder more about those lost echoes, the whispers that lingered behind the walls.